Welcome to the Anthropic Claude Certified Architect Foundations CCA-F Question Bank Series. In this video, I've got 10 exam-style practice questions lined up for you, covering the kind of agentic architecture, Claude code, prompt engineering, tool and MCP design, and context management scenarios you'll see on the real CCA-F exam. Each question comes with the correct answer and a full explanation, including why the wrong options are wrong. Here's how to get the most out of this. When a question appears, pause the video, pick your answer, then hit play to check yourself. Ready? Let's dive in. Question 346. A session reports that a change is complete and correct. What is the appropriate next step before accepting it? The correct answer is A. Run the code and its tests to observe the actual behavior. A report of correctness is a claim. Executing the code is evidence. Running it is the direct way to establish whether the change actually works. Now, why the other options are wrong? Read the code carefully, since review is more thorough than execution is incorrect. Review is valuable and complementary, but readers miss defects that running the code would immediately reveal. Ask for a detailed explanation of why the change is correct is incorrect. An explanation can be entirely plausible and still describe incorrect code. Accept it, since the change was made with full visibility of the codebase is incorrect. Visibility of the codebase does not establish that the change behaves as intended. Question 347. During a task, temporary scripts and Scratch output files were created in the repository. What should happen before committing? The correct answer is B. Remove them or exclude them from version control, so only intended changes are committed. Scratch artifacts are not part of the deliverable. Removing or ignoring them keeps the commit focused on the actual change and the repository clean for everyone. Now, why the other options are wrong? Commit them, since they document how the work was done, is incorrect. Scratch files are not documentation and clutter the repository and its history. Move them into a temp directory and commit, that is incorrect. A committed temp directory is still committed clutter that will accumulate indefinitely. Leave them uncommitted in the working tree indefinitely is incorrect. They then confuse every future diff and risk being committed accidentally later. Question 348. A team must change a critical legacy module that has no test coverage. What is the appropriate sequence? The correct answer is C. Write tests that capture the current behavior first, confirm they pass, then make the change and watch for unexpected failures. Tests written against existing behavior establish a safety net that reveals unintended consequences of the change. Without that baseline, there is no way to distinguish an intended change from a regression. Now, why the other options are wrong? Make the change carefully and add tests for the new behavior afterwards is incorrect. Tests added after the fact cannot tell you whether the change broke something that previously worked. Rewrite the module from scratch with tests, since the legacy code is untested anyway, is incorrect. A rewrite of a critical module is far riskier than a targeted change, and without tests, there is no specification of what it must preserve. Rely on manual testing of the affected user flows after the change is incorrect. Manual testing covers the flows someone thinks of and cannot be repeated cheaply on every future change. Question 349. A team uses agents both to write code and to review it. Should the two use the same configuration? The correct answer is D. No, the reviewer should have read-only access and a prompt oriented to finding problems, while the author needs write access and a prompt oriented to producing a change. The two roles have different capabilities and different objectives. A reviewer that can edit may fix rather than report, and a review-oriented prompt is what surfaces problems instead of producing code. Now, why the other options are wrong? Yes, since a single configuration is simpler to maintain and both tasks involve the same codebase is incorrect. Simplicity is outweighed by the fact that a reviewer with write access can silently alter the thing it is meant to assess. Yes, but the reviewer should be instructed not to make changes is incorrect. This leaves the capability present and protected only by instruction, and the objective is still not oriented to review. No, the reviewer should run against the pull request diff rather than the working tree, but otherwise be configured identically is incorrect. Reviewing the diff is sensible, but leaving write access and an authoring-oriented prompt in place means the reviewer can still alter what it is meant to assess. Question 350. A session produces a database migration that drops a column. What should the workflow require before it runs against any shared environment? The correct answer is A. Human review of the migration itself, plus verification that the column is genuinely unused, since the operation destroys data irreversibly. A destructive schema change cannot be undone by reverting code, so it requires review of the migration and evidence that nothing depends on the column. This is a case where the irreversibility justifies the friction. Now, why the other options are wrong. A successful run against a local database which proves the migration is valid is incorrect. Validity is not the concern. A syntactically perfect migration can still destroy data that was still needed. A passing test suite, since tests would fail if the column were still needed, is incorrect. Tests only cover paths they exercise, and a column may be read by reporting, integrations, or code paths with no coverage. Automatic backup before the migration runs so the data can be restored is incorrect. Backups are essential, but restoring a production database is a severe operation, not a substitute for not dropping a needed column. Question 351. An engineer performs a mix of work, renaming variables across files and designing a concurrency-sensitive refactor. How should model selection be approached? The correct answer is B. Use a faster, cheaper model for the mechanical work and reserve the most capable model for the design-sensitive refactor. Mechanical, well-specified edits do not benefit from deep reasoning, while a concurrency-sensitive design does. Matching the tier to the task's difficulty controls cost without compromising the work that matters. Now, why the other options are wrong. Use the most capable model for everything, since consistency avoids surprises, is incorrect. This pays a premium on mechanical work that a cheaper model handles reliably. Use the cheapest model for everything and review its output more carefully is incorrect. Careful review cannot compensate for insufficient reasoning depth on a concurrency-sensitive design. Use the most capable model for the renaming, since errors there affect many files, is incorrect. Renaming across files is mechanical and well specified. Breadth is not the same as difficulty. Question 352. A team's deployment skill describes a process that changed 3 months ago, and sessions now follow outdated steps. What practice prevents this? The correct answer is C. Treat the skill as part of the deployment process itself, so a change to the process includes updating the skill in the same change. Documentation drifts when it is maintained separately from what it describes. Coupling the skill's update to the process change makes them move together rather than diverging. Now, why the other options are wrong. Review all skills quarterly to check they remain accurate is incorrect. Periodic review catches drift eventually, but tolerates months of incorrect guidance, which is the problem described. Add a date to each skill so readers know how current it is incorrect. A date warns that content may be stale without making it correct, and sessions will still follow the outdated steps. Remove the skill, since deployment processes change too often to document, is incorrect. The process is documented precisely because it is easy to get wrong. The fix is keeping it current. Question 353. A repository enforces a structured commit message format via a server-side check. Agent-authored commits are frequently rejected. What is the appropriate fix? The correct answer is D. Record the required format in project memory so sessions produce conforming messages, and keep the server-side check as the authoritative gate. The convention is a durable project fact that belongs in project memory, so it is followed by default. The server-side check remains the enforcement point, since project memory guides but does not guarantee. Now, why the other options are wrong. Remove the server-side check, since it is blocking legitimate work, is incorrect. The check is what keeps history consistent. Removing it abandons the convention rather than meeting it. Rewrite non-conforming messages manually after each rejection is incorrect. This is the current toil, repeated on every commit. Add a hook that rewrites any non-conforming message into a generic conforming one is incorrect. A generic message satisfies the format while destroying the information the convention exists to capture. Question 354. A repository contains large binary design assets. Sessions sometimes attempt to read them, wasting time and context to no benefit. What should be done? The correct answer is A. Exclude the binary paths from what sessions read, and note in project memory that they are non-text assets. Binary assets yield nothing useful when read as text. Excluding those paths prevents the wasted attempt, and recording Y avoids anyone rediscovering the same dead end. Now, why the other options are wrong. Convert the assets to a text-based format so they can be read usefully is incorrect. Design assets are binary for good reason, and converting them would destroy them. Move the assets out of the repository entirely is incorrect. This may be right for very large files, but it is a significant workflow change to solve a problem that exclusion handles directly. Instruct each session not to open files in those directories is incorrect. This depends on the instruction being followed every session rather than the read being prevented. Question 355. An organization has 60 repositories that should share a common set of hooks and permission rules, but each has diverged. What approach addresses this sustainably? The correct answer is B. Distribute the shared configuration as a versioned, installable unit that repositories adopt and update, rather than copying it into each one. Copies diverge because there is no mechanism to propagate changes. Packaging the shared configuration so repositories consume a version of it gives a single source of truth and a real upgrade path. Now, why the other options are wrong? Write a script that copies the canonical configuration into all 60 repositories periodically is incorrect. Overwriting local configuration destroys legitimate per-repository customization and creates conflicts, though it does address propagation. Audit the 60 repositories quarterly and file issues for each divergence is incorrect. This detects drift while doing nothing to prevent it and generates recurring manual work forever. Consolidate all 60 repositories into a monorepo so there is only one configuration is incorrect. A monorepo migration is an enormous change to make for a configuration distribution problem. And that's a wrap on this video. Nice work getting through those 10 questions. If this helped, you're going to want the complete set. All 390 exam-style questions, with full explanations across all 5 CCA-F domains, are available in my Udemy course, Anthropic Claude Certified Architect Foundations. CCA-F, 6 full practice exams. The link is in the description below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video, where I'll walk you through 10 more questions. See you in the next video.